אנחנו נלמד מתוך שיעור תעש עם הרבש, נקרא מתוך תלמוד 10 הספירות, כרך ב'.
We're going to learn from a lesson of Tess with Rabash. We're going to be reading from the inner light of item 43 in volume 2, part 5. The inner light. Before that, we'll read from the words of the Ari, part 5 and volume 2 of the study of 10 Sefirot, item 43, the words of the Ari. After that, it returns to being not expanding in Keter, and then it is expanding in Chokhmah. It is also expanding in Binah because of the Chesed there, because he desires mercy. At that time, it is also expanding in Chesed, for then Chesed descends to his place. And then it is not expanding in Gvura, because Gvura ascends with Chesed. At that time, it is expanding in Tiferet, and light descends in Tiferet. Then it is not expand in Netzach, since the light of Netzach ascends with Tiferet. At that time, it is expanded in Hod, since then the vessel of Netzach turns its anterior and gives the three lights to Hod, at which time Hod turns its anterior to Yesod and shines in it.
We'll stand here and begin. To Aleph, the Hod turns its face to Yesod and shines in it. You already know that all this light that is extended in Mati and not Mati, expanding and not expanding from Bina on phase 1, which is in the vessel of Bina up to Hod, is light of Chasadim, meaning the level that emerged on the coarseness of phase 1 that remained after the refinement of Bina, which is phase 2. And the whole difference of expanding and not expanding does not pertain to the level of Zaranpin, but it's one level, coarseness of phase 1. So what does the change there of expanding and not expanding do there? It is mainly through the changes of illumination of Gar and Chasadim. When illumination of Gar, Chasadim, Chokhmah shines in Chasadim, and Chasadim have no illumination of Gar without Chokhmah. But at the level, at the degree of the level, there was no difference between them because they were all on the level of phase 1. For example, if we say not expanding in Keter, then 4-3 in Keter is refined into 3-2. If we say not expanding in Chokhmah, the 3-2 of the vessel of Chokhmah is refined. But when we say expanding and not expanding in Zeranpin, it's one phase. You can't say that it was refined from phase 1. So what are we saying? That it expands and doesn't expand. What causes it? The light that shines in the Gar of the degree, meaning Chokhmah. It's called expanding and not expanding when Chokhmah does not shine in the degree, but not at the degree of that level, at the level of that degree. It says they're all at the level of phase 1. And here also, he turned the Sefirah Hod. The Sefirah Hod turns its face backwards, so he explains. Although he still did not make the refinement of phase 1, but canceled the illumination of Gar in it, which is the anterior, and made the posterior into anterior. This is what he already called not expanding in Hod and expanding in Yesod. However, here we should know, we should not think that in Hod and Yesod there's a change of phase one here or not? So he says, in truth, afterwards he interprets differently. We'll see it in a minute. In other words, the light of Malchut in the vessel of Yesod, meaning that in Yesod, there is no longer coarseness of phase one. Coarseness of phase one was refined in the Sefirah Hod, and from Hod to Yesod there was no refinement, from coarseness of phase one to root coarseness, from which we learn Yesod of Ab is narrow and long, has no chasadim. It no longer has phase one. It's called light of chasadim in illumination of chokhmah. So what does it have? Only chokhmah. From which phase does it have chokhmah? Since the level of Ab has chokhmah on the phase of chasadim, he no longer has it. Here it tells us that from Hod to Yesod, it still did not refine. It made the refinement, complete refinement of phase one. But what did Hod do? It canceled the illumination of Gar in it, which is the anterior, and made the posterior, which is Chasadim, into the anterior. And what did he give to Yesod? Chasadim without Chokhmah. Also, this is because of what we learn. We'll see it later. However, here we should know what the Ari writes below, that the zone of in the vessel of Bina copulated and engendered one hay, where the Vav inside the hay was given to the vessel of Yesod, and the Daled over the Vav was given to the vessel of Malchut. We'll see it in a minute. Here we said there are two questions. One, it means that phase one was not refined, except what did Hod give to Yesod? Chasadim without Chokhmah. This will be difficult. We always learn that yes, in Yesod of Ab, it's narrow, it has no Chasadim. Here it implies that there is Chasadim. We'll see it later. Another thing that's perplexing, we learn everywhere that Bina, its expansion, Chesed rises and it comes only up to Hod. Why? We need to explain simply. If we learn that the light of Chokhmah is in the vessel of Keter, the light of Bina in the vessel of Chokhmah, then the light of Chesed in the vessel of Bina, and the light of Yesod is in the vessel of Yesod, and the light of Malchut in the vessel of Yesod. So the light of Malchut has already been refined from 1 to root coarseness, which is called the light of Malchut. When we say expanding in Keter, there's a Sefirah of Keter here. Expanding in Keter. We don't learn it like that. When there's a 4-3, who has 4-3? There are 10 Sefirot there, called Parzuf Ta'amim. And we said that at the level of Keter, it has 4-3. So later when we say not expanding in Keter, Malchut was refined. Keter was not refined. The Malchut in each degree was refined, and only 3-2 remained. And on that emerges the level of, and this is called the vessel of Chokhmah. And also there's Malchut and there's 10 Sefirot.
That's what I'm asking. He means.
So here, look, here we learn in a different way. We learn all 6 phases are one level. There's already a difference. Keter is one level. The vessel of Bina is one level. The vessel of Chesed is one level. Don't forget. which is called Zeranpin. How is that identified? Now we also need to learn. When we learn that Zeranpin has only Vak, that's only the particular form in the 10 Sefirot. But if we say the level of Zeranpin, it means the Malchut of that level has coarseness of phase 1. From this we get confused. He doesn't explain. He doesn't elaborate, and he often does elaborate. In this, he doesn't elaborate, so it confuses. As I learned, the level of Keter has 10 Sefirot. He doesn't divide them. Here, in Zeranpin of one level, he divides changes in the vessel. So we need to learn two things. On the one hand, it is one level. What is one level? One Malchut should come. On the other hand, we discern 5 phases there, such as the example of the level of Keter, the level of the vessel of Keter, in the vessel of Chokhmah, in the vessel of Binah, in the vessel of Zeranpin, and the vessel of Malchut. But the elaboration is missing. He doesn't give everything, of course. Again, when I say the level of Zeranpin, 10 Sefirot, so if I get in, I don't want to say this, but this is what is implied. We should say this. The chesed of the level is called Keter. The Gvura in the level is called Chokhmah. Tiferet in the level is called Binah. Netzach is called Zeranpin, containing 6 phases, I would say. And what is also incorporated in Malchut is 10 Sefirot. It's Chagat Nahi. But what about Yesod? If he says Yesod is the inclusion of 5 phases, meaning as I discern in coarseness of phase 1, 5 phases called Chagat Nehi, as I say Kachab Zon in the vessel of Keter, and Kachab Zon in the vessel of Chokhmah, and Kachab Zon in the vessel of Binah. I say Chagat Nehi in the vessel of Zeranpin, including Chagat Nehi in the vessel of Yesod. And that too is confusing. He doesn't give all of the details, you understand? Each Sefirah that comes, the Chesed comes and gives the vessel of Yesod. Gvura comes and the vessel of Yesod. You find that Yesod is not its own phase, but what? It's incorporated with everyone. Whereas when Tiferet comes, it adds a Sefirah in Zeranpin. Netzach comes, adding a Sefirah in Zeranpin. But when Yesod comes, you don't need anything, except that what was before is incorporated here. There's nothing new here. That's what the Ari says, but he doesn't explain it. It's all in general. What does it include? He doesn't explain. Inclusion, we learn, it's like a nucleus, like a big tree. You find that what we learn, Yesod that gives to Malchut, is no longer like Chagat. They connect to themselves, except they are diminished in Yesod. But the main thing is that all the Sefirot did not receive their names from one inclusion, but from many inclusions. The middle of Yesod is called Mazal, dripping, when the abundance comes drip by drip in the departure. In other words, the names were not given over one rule, but many phases that were added since the time they emerged from the 4 of direct light. They were added each time, the first restriction and second restriction. This is why the Ari says the real Sefirot, the real names that we begin to speak of, is only from the world of Atzilut. Above the world of Atzilut, it's only a borrowed name to appease the ear. So we speak there by way of allegories and comparisons. But there too, it was an allegory in comparison, as if, why are these names, they don't have completeness? Why are they called by those names? There aren't, except where are the real names given, after which they were called by these names? Only in the world of Atzilut, we learned. Yes, there's always something missing for all the to be filled. That the discernments will tell us, the name will tell us all the discernments. Here he speaks only of empty vessels that passed with their records to Parzuf Ab. There, in Tree of Life, it's written, Rav Chaim Vital asks, in order to understand himself. Rav Chaim Vital asks, he says there, when was the vessels of Eke made after the departure of the light of Golgotha? Empty vessels remained. He comes and asks, but afterwards, in Parzuf Ab, when a coupling emerged once more in phase 3, and Parzuf Ab emerged once more, then light will come into the vessel again, when the Eke of the vessels is cancelled. So he explains, Chaim Vital explains that since the light of Keter remained above, it descends, only the light of Chokhmah descends into the vessel of Keter, and the light of Bina in the vessel of Chokhmah. So it went up. You find that each and every vessel, but when the light comes, it fills the vessel as much as it wants. It receives, in the example of Parzuf Golgotha, but empty vessels are called a deficiency. This is why he gives the rule in all the places, that the real vessels, in each and every degree, he doesn't say new vessels, but only from old vessels, which means that in the old vessels, again, there's no Eke. Why? Because he drew the light, he drew it on the expansion of its screen. So there's equivalence again, except what? What is missing? The vessel of Keter that now does not receive the level of Keter. Why? Because it can no longer aim in order to bestow. So now it's called an Ekya, a vessel of reception, and not, there's no equivalence of form here. Whereas what it does receive, there does have equivalence of form. So what we should say is new vessels, there's no Ekya of the vessel. And all the Ekya, the vessels Ekya are in the old vessels. And here is nothing in the new vessels. But what he says, the coupling that was made, how it comes into the old vessels. What about the new vessels? He doesn't speak, he doesn't say. What are old vessels? What are new vessels? That too we need to know. He often uses the words, what is old, new vessels, what are old vessels? And we say this. We learned that Parzuf Golgotha shone. How does it shine? It's Malchut drew the light. And then we learned, after Malchut drew the light, there was a clash of inner and surrounding. That was when the screen was refined, and it no longer had the strength to receive in order to bestow. Therefore, the light departed. Okay.
We're going
to move to the next part of the lesson.